The last BMW M5 you and I drove, while magnificent, was $141,000. What if I were to tell you one could have almost the identical experience and save 50 large in the process? Would that be enough to say no to the M badge? Admittedly, quite a statement, but follow me here for a minute. This is indeed an updated 7th generation 5 Series, and it has an N63 twin turbocharged 4.4 V8. For the avoidance of doubt, the M5 has the S63. Now the horsepower rating, yeah, they change. In the M5, it's 600 or 617 in the competition. Here it's a measly 523. But the torque in both the S63 and the N63 is 553 pound-feet. Okay, so now that we all understand the numbers, all of a sudden I don't look so crazy with what I'm calling the poor man's M5. There are a couple of additional aspects it shares with the M5, one of them being it is only on offer as all-wheel drive. And the fuel economy is equally as abysmal, 17, 25, 20 combined. You could say highway is okay, but I've never seen that. Then there are the performance figures, and here let's start with VMAX because it does indeed give up a bit to the rich man's car. 130 miles an hour, 155 with the right tires. 0 to 60, that is a completely different kettle of fish. Remember, the M5 was 3.2 to 60. This one, 50 grand cheaper, 3.6. Okay, so yes, a bigger engine than the last two updated 5 Series you and I have driven. This one, 4,275 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,939 kilograms. Now, there is something very important to point out. That is about 400 pounds more than the 540 we drove on this same road, with that sport mode. Oh yes, switch comes on at 2,000 RPM, pulls all the way up to 6,000 RPM. Wow, this is an unusual V8. But you know what? It's not unusual in one area. It feels like an M5 in terms of thrust. God, this is an incredibly fast car. Like faster than the previous middle-of-the-road V8 5 Series. This, I hate to say this, in terms of thrust, this is too close for comfort to the M5. Like, this is unusually good. In terms of the transmission, the way it works with this engine, it feels identical in terms of changing gears, in terms of the way it delivers power with this transmission as it does the M5, and that's because it is the same transmission. It's the 8-speed torque converter automatic, and I told you this in the 540 episode. This transmission, it works well with pretty much all the BMWs we've driven. However, it works best with the V8s. It's something about the torque curve, or perhaps the personality, the way this engine delivers power, that is so well suited to a torque converter automatic. And I can't believe I even said those words. And the reason why I say that is I don't want a dual clutch. Yeah, it'd be nice, but the car is not crying out for a dual clutch. At the end of the day, this thing, crazy fast for the middle-of-the-road model. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the After Game with today's contestant, one of the best spec'd BMWs you and I have experienced in a very long time. This one, the 2021 BMW M550 xDrive, for a base price of $76,800. Now, I do feel it prudent to point out that is almost $30,000 cheaper than the M5 we drove about 3 months ago. To that, we add the color. This one, I was told, was going to be that horrific purple color. I was relieved when this stunning burgundy turned up. It is called Aventurum Red Metallic. It is a BMW individual color. It does cost extra and well worth the $1,950. The thing that works here is not just the color, it is the interior they spec'd with it. Cognac Dakota leather. So the color and trim, the texture is different on the leather than other leathers we've experienced in BMWs, but the color has a bit of like a reddish brown hue to it, not just a saddle really works and does not cost extra. Then we add the driver's assistance package. This is the level 2 autonomy. No, this is not a self-driving car, but it does do the adaptive cruise control for $1,700. Then we press on to an incredibly important option given the mission of this specific BMW, the dynamic handling package. It's the adaptive suspension in the Pro setting, and most importantly, the active roll stabilization, $3,600. Then the parking assistance plus, I don't think that's an important option for this vehicle considering the power of it, but it's a drive recorder, the park distance control, and the surround view camera for $800. Then the executive package, this is a nice touch, one of the spec things here that work. The rear sunshades, the ceramic controls on the dash, although it's a $77,000 base price car, why is that optional? The head-up display and the Qi wireless charger for $2,150. And the 20-inch wheels, again, work incredibly well in picking up the cerium gray trim on the grille and the mirror fairings, $1,100. Then heated steering wheel is optional on an almost $77,000 car. Come on, $190. Then we press on to another option that falls under the heading of how beautifully spec'd this specific car is, serial ending 30. And yeah, it has a little bit to do with that stunning burgundy or the cognac leather interior, but all of it comes together with a leather-covered dashboard that is a bargain at $700. Then the most important option is the Bowers & Wilkins stereo. After all, if you have 553 pound-feet of torque, you kind of need a kick in stereo, $3,400. And the only other thing we add is the destination and handling from Dingolfing Deutschland for $995, which brings us to a total retail price of $93,735. Put another way, almost 50 grand cheaper than the BMW M5 we drove 3 months ago. Hopefully I was not unclear about how this thing delivers power. Driving dynamics, that's a bit of a different kettle of fish. Not that it's bad, it's unusually good, but a bit of a mixed bag here. It works very much like all the other 5 Series that we've driven. Not quite to the sharpness, not quite to the precision of an M5, but it's definitely a couple steps above that 540. Like this car, the only way to describe it, it's very easy to drive this thing very fast. I probably shouldn't be telling you this. This is the kind of vehicle where you should be worried about losing your license. It's that kind of a car, whether it's up here or in traffic. In terms of managing pitch, squat, dive, and roll, it does just as good a job as other 5 Series. However, the setup here, it's not quite as professional as an M5. And one point that's evidence of that is it doesn't have quite all the same mappings of the suspension as the M5. So yeah, you can put it in like full fat mode, which we're in right now, and it does a really good job controlling pitch. There's virtually no pitch here and virtually no squat or dive, which is something unusual for a car that's almost 4,300 pounds. Where it falls a bit short of the M5 is it just can't get to that level of unobtainium in terms of chassis performance. It's got most of the chassis control systems in there, including that M Sport differential, which does an unusually good job of transferring torque from side to side here. And clearly that's working well in conjunction with the all-wheel drive system. You don't feel like, oh my God, the front wheels are fighting to go that way and steer the vehicle. They do a good job of sending most of the torque to the back of the vehicle to the point where you feel that this is a rear drive car. No, it doesn't have that same trick that the M5 has, where you can lop off the torque to the front of the car. Here it's all-wheel drive 100% of the time, but you can clearly tell probably 80% or more is going to the rear. Then there's the steering, and here it does feel like an M5. I wouldn't call it perfect, but it's exactly where it needs to be for the mission of this vehicle, which brings us to the brakes. And there, we've discussed this many times before, the M Sport brakes, one of the better in the business in terms of standard steel rotor performance brakes. This is not a vehicle that really needs the carbon ceramic rotors. Then the wheels and tires, something interesting here we talked about in the options game. This car has the optional 20-inch wheels. 19s are fitted as standard. And this is an instance where I would struggle with which choice I would have the car fitted with. In most cases, I would want the smaller wheel with a bit of the sidewall because, hey, maybe I might take it on the track. Probably not. An almost, $93,000 car on a track. But if I did, I'd want a little bit more sidewall. Here, the 20 inches do not degrade the ride quality. Now, granted, this is not the best road to judge ride quality, but on the transit up from the hangar, it was unusually good on the freeway, not to the point where it would disturb the occupants, even those that don't understand, well, why do you need a car with so much power? And then something rather subjective. This is a vehicle that I have termed the poor man's M5. And I say that because it's kind of like a Frankencar. It's got the go of an M5. Yeah, you can be pedantic and say it's a half a second slower to 60. That really doesn't make a difference. It feels as fast as an M5. But where it's a Frankencar is the suspension, the sharpness of the suspension doesn't back up that kind of power. To the point, this is the kind of thing where you probably could get in a bit more trouble than in an M5. Now, yes, as we discussed in the options game, this one is fitted with the active roll stabilization, but the advice I have given to you in many previous BMW episodes, as well as 48-volt Mercedes and Audi episodes, this system doesn't react as fast as the active roll stabilization in the cars that have the full 48-volt system. So it can't manage its heft as fast as those vehicles, and here it's a bigger issue because it's almost 4,300 pounds, and here that very quickly becomes a rather sizable issue. I'd say this is a tool for someone that does not want to be ostentatious, yet someone that has learned car control and someone that does not mind paying very large gas bills. And so we arrive at the incredibly obvious question, M550 or M5? And here you are not going to be pleased with me after the exercise of this episode. The answer has to be M5. And it's going to be that answer for the very obvious and very boring reason, and that would be resale value. Kumo and I did some digging, a couple different sites on what this thing would be worth as opposed to an M5. We looked at a vehicle about 2 years old, 30,000 miles, and the reality is one gets more than half the premium back for the M5 over the M550. And I gotta believe it's not just the money. An M5 has to be easier to sell than an M550 for no other reason than they probably make more of these. Which brings us to the wish list. And here, I'm gonna get creative with you. How about the idea of a sleeper 5? Something that looks like this, but underneath is all M5. Kinda like the GT3 Touring, but this is more, I guess, luxurious. And then while we're at it and we're asking for creativity, how about a manual transmission in the Sleeper 5? And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I have to say it was an incredibly pleasant surprise to not get another purple BMW and instead get this stunning burgundy with the Cognac Dakota leather interior. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.